Lesson number 13, documents that influenced America. Where did America get its ideas about government? This lesson is going to focus on something we've touched on in the past a little bit, which is that the ideas that helped create the United States, for the most part, were taken from other places and other people outside of America. All of the ideas that you see in this, for the most part, are from other countries or from people that lived in different countries. So what we'll see while you're going through this is all these ideas and how those ideas still exist in the United States today. And be sure as you're going through this, if you want, look at the questions before you continue watching the video, because then you'll be able to kind of think about the questions, and when you hear something that rings a bell, makes you remember one of the questions below, you'll be able to pause the video and go and answer that question. That's totally fine if you do that. So again, if that didn't make sense, maybe pause the video right now, go look at the questions. This way when you're watching the video, you know what to look for. So the objectives are the things that you will be able to do at the end of the lesson. You'll be able to basically just be able to describe some of the documents, and you'll be able to understand what they have to do with us today and how they still exist in the United States. At least how they influenced the United States still exists. The questions you'll be able to answer, remember you don't have to answer them, it's just questions that you would be able to answer after watching this video, is where did America get its ideas about government, and how did these ideas influence our rights and government? So what's it got to do with us? So when you go through all of these slides and you see all these influences, you're going to see in the bottom corner of each slide some or most of these words that you see up on the screen here. These are the 5 things that kind of make the United States what it is. These are the 5 things that make the United States a fair country to live in, and a country that practices government that is supposed to protect its people. So these are the 5 things. The rule of law we've talked about. Remember, that's the thing that just says the laws are the most important thing, that no one is above the law, even the president or other members of government, and everybody has to follow the law no matter what. Self-government just means that people have a say in their government. If they don't like something, they can speak up about it. For example, we get to vote. That's an example of self-government. We get to run, or if we want to be in office, which means if we decide that we want to be a mayor or a representative, we can do that. We just need to run and win an election for it. So that's self-government. Due process just means that laws are fair and that you're treated fairly under the law. So if you are accused of a crime, or even if you're convicted of a crime, meaning that you're found guilty of a crime, you are treated fairly. You don't have to deal with overwhelming penalties. Like if you steal a candy bar, you're not going to go to jail for 100 years, for example. So due process just means that you're treated fairly under the law, whether you are guilty or not guilty of a crime. Limited government means that the government does have power, but it doesn't have all the power. It has things set up so if the government does something wrong, they can be punished in some way. So not all of the power lies in the hands of government. And then rights, the one that I think is the most important one. As U.S. citizens, we all have certain rights. Those rights need to be protected by the government, and they can't be taken away by the government. So those are the 5 things, and you'll see each of those in at least one of the influence that we're about to go over. So here are the influences. The first one's the Magna Carta. It was a document that was written a very long time ago, almost 800 years ago, and it was an agreement between a king and a bunch of nobles. That's kind of like a bunch of rich people at the time. So what they agreed to was that the king wouldn't have all the power in a country, that the nobles would have some power as well. So that was kind of a crazy thing back then, because usually kings had all the power and nobody could do anything about it. But the Magna Carta said that the power would be split between the king and the nobles. So that's something that we still have in the United States today, where we split up power between the president, Congress, and all other parts of the government. Mayflower Compact was an agreement. Compact means agreement between the Pilgrims. You've probably heard of the Pilgrims. They were on their way over to America. They were on their boat called the Mayflower, and they decided that they were going to sign something that said that when they got to America, they would have this new home where people were treated fairly, where people had a say in decisions, where people had a say in government, and that no one would be super powerful, that the most important thing would be rules and laws, and that everybody would be treated fairly under those rules of law. The English Bill of Rights was just a list of rights in England. We still have that today. We just call it the American Bill of Rights. It's very similar to the English Bill of Rights, so we use some of their ideas when we wrote the Bill of Rights, but we added some things in as well, and that still exists today. The Bill of Rights are just a list of all the rights that we have as a U.S. citizen, and that's something we're going to get into a little bit more over the next couple weeks. Then you have the Enlightenment influences. These are just people who influenced the United States in some way. Like, they come up with ideas, they wrote them down, and people that helped create and form the United States read these ideas and tried to use them when they were coming up with the structure and the way that the U.S. government works. First guy was Locke. We've talked about him before. He was the one that thought that when you're born, you have natural rights, things that shouldn't be taken away from you, and that it's the government's job to protect those rights. If the government doesn't protect those rights, then it's the right of the people to get rid of that government. So Locke thought that we're born with rights, and that government has to protect those rights. Voltaire was a big proponent or advocate or supporter of freedom of speech. He thought that freedom of speech was a really, really important part of people living underneath of a government. If people didn't have freedom of speech, they couldn't speak against the government and say what they thought should change or what the government was doing wrong. So when you think Voltaire, you should think freedom of speech. Montesquieu came up with this idea that power shouldn't be held by just one person or by a small group of people, that power should be split up or separated. So he comes up with the idea to split up power between a lot of people rather than just one person or a small group of people. And he said that because he felt like if power was held by just one person or by just a small group of people, then those people might abuse the power. So he thought it would be a good idea to split up the power as much as possible. This way, nobody had too much, and then nobody could abuse it. Rousseau came up with the idea that we, as citizens, are the ones that agree to have a government. That we're saying to the government, yes, you can have power, and you can have some control over us, but we need you to be here for us. So Rousseau comes up with this idea that yes, we're okay with having a government. Yes, they can have power and control. But that government, as it exists, needs to be there for its people and there to protect its people. That's what Rousseau believed in. Last one, you're almost done, was Common Sense. Common Sense was kind of like a small book, and it was distributed around the American colonies before the United States even existed. And it just talked about how having a king, being in control of everything, and not having a lot of say in what was going on in the American colonies didn't make sense. So in the pamphlet, he tries to argue that it would be common sense, or it would make sense for the United States to break away and kind of be its own country. And it worked. A lot of people read his book, and eventually it's going to lead to the colonies trying to create their own country. So that was a lot of information. Remember, make sure that if it's too much, pause it and look at the questions and see if you can answer any of them. Don't feel like you have to get all the way to the end to this point before answering the questions. You can pause it in the middle and kind of look through the questions to see if any have been answered yet. I think that would be helpful. If this is too much and it's just too much information for you to see in video form and you'd rather me explain it to you on the phone or on BBIM, I've done that with a lot of people. All you gotta do is ask and I'd be happy to help. If you don't need any help, good luck.